From Oscar favorites
to Oscar snubs,
we'll be discussing the zone of interest
and all of us strangers.
this week on the Film Angle.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
Hey. So we got a very cheery episode for you this week, guys. I think we did kind of tease it last week. We teased a triple bill of sadness and depression. However, Kris, you were unable to catch up with Stalker, so we've only got a double bill of sadness and depression.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I had all the intention of catching up with Stalker, but time just eluded me. I did try to cram it into like a really late evening.
You don't want to cram it.
I was prone on my bed, which is a stupid idea to begin with, and I had my headphones in. I was on my Mac, and I got half an hour in, and Lauren had to. I woke up to her closing the MacBook on my lap.
Oh no!
Saying like, "You're going to sleep." Yeah. It's nothing on the film's part. Completely my part. I should have known what I was getting into after experiencing a Tarkovsky movie on this podcast before. So yeah, that's on me. We will be discussing.
You've watched a little bit of it, is what you're saying.
I got a half an hour flavor of it, yeah, but like nothing overly happened in the story so far.
That's a common
kind
thing.
of like. I mean, no, I'm excited about it because it's a big cultural cornerstone. Stalker 2 is coming out later this year, and it's like one of the most hyped, I think it's only on Xbox, but it's like one of the most hyped video games in the last couple of years. The Metro series, which is a horror game franchise, completely is based on the Stalker movie. So like that whole sort of post-war sci-fi apocalyptic like neo Russia is very, very big at the minute. So yeah, so I'm kind of interested in Stalker just to see where that kind of fits in on media that I've sort of seen. When I engage in like video games and stuff.
I, to be honest, I didn't even know it was a video game. That makes me even more interested, especially after kind of what I've seen so far. I say so far, I've seen the whole film now, so I don't know what I'm talking about so far. But I guess there's part of me that was just like, I didn't watch it and go, aha, a video game. Definitely. So, yeah, no, very interesting, very interesting. Interested to see what you think later on as well. So
yeah, so it's probably for the better because the little taster I got, I think it would have been maybe a little bit too lofty for this episode, and that's something I'm kind of becoming aware of more and more as we do this podcast. Is when we do these sort of episodes, let's try to make them as light as possible because we'll get upset. Everybody else will get upset. Well, not upset's not the word, but like you can kind of feel yourself sort of sink when you talk about movies that are so heavy in rapid succession. So, and tonight's no stranger, really.
Yeah.
Prepare for devastation.
Absolutely. So obviously we're talking all of us strangers, and we're talking zone of interest. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I think we've talked the zone of interest first. That feels more like the natural sort of progression to me.
Fair enough. So worth saying with the zone of interest, I watched this film 2 hours ago.
Fresh out.
Yes, I was. I didn't get a chance to see it over the weekend, so I was like, as soon as I get some time on Monday, I got to get over to it. So yeah, I am fresh from this film that probably needs a little bit of time to sink in. But Kris, you are not fresh from this film. You saw it about a week ago. Am I right?
Yeah, I saw it about 8 days ago. So yeah, I've had a bit of time to digest it. Yeah, it's a lot to think about, and I think the movie not exactly. I think it does a good job. It's interesting that this film is nestled within Best Picture nomination territory because it's just not the classic thing that the Academy would go for. But I love how sort of hyper specific it is, but yet its ideas and what's behind it is quite sprawling and quite thought provoking, and it's not. This isn't like Life is Beautiful that came out in the 80s, where it's something that's like a big Holocaust epic that's going to try to pull on your heartstrings every single second. This is really a film that kind of earns its sort of, well, I wouldn't say catharsis, but definitely it's emotional moments that kind of come towards the latter part of the film. It kind of, and the sound design. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
but
I think
there's a lot of elements at play here.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of elements at play that I haven't fully kind of like fully develop my thoughts on or anything like that. So I'm almost quite excited to talk to you. I say I'm almost. I am
Mm.
always excited to talk to you, Chris. But I'm very excited to talk about this one in a way because
Yeah.
I think you'll help me form what I think as well in regards to the film, being a lot more fresh on it, and you can kind of. Yeah, it's always good to have, when you go to the cinema alone. It's always good to have somebody to talk to afterwards.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is my talk to you afterwards kind of thing. I did check on a podcast, which was like a half an hour interview with Jonathon Glazer. So I thought, excellent, that'll help me out with a few things maybe. But yeah, Zone of Interest is the latest film from Jonathon Glazer. It follows the family of Rudolf Hoss, who was the main commander, I think, of
Yeah, Commandant, yeah.
of the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland in the 40s, and it follows his family as they live in a house directly next to the camp itself. So direct that the wall of the camp is in their back garden. So
Yeah.
very uh, dark premise, but very interesting. But the whole film is not a standard kind of drama kind of fare, as you alluded to. It's closer to that of a kind of art film, and I kind of went in thinking it was gonna be maybe more arty than it was, and but it does still follow. It's still more accessible than I thought it was going to be. Maybe more accessible than Jonathan Glazer's last film, Under the Skin, which was great, and his last film was
Yeah.
9 years ago. So yeah, this he doesn't when he makes a film, he's making an impact. So
Mm.
yeah, there is definitely more straightforward in a way than I thought it was going to be, but very interesting in the way it was filmed. Basically surveillance style in a way.
Yeah,
They
there's a Big Brother approach to this,
Yeah, they
yeah.
had like 10 cameras hooked up in the house, and the minimal crew. It was all kind of remotely operated, so the actors who were going through there, including Sandra Hüller, uh, basically just had to like live out the life of the hosses, and just be Nazis for the day, or weeks or
Yeah.
months, or however long they filmed it. It's probably quite a harrowing experience, but yeah, Sandra Hüller being the lead of two Oscar films, mad,
Yeah.
good on her.
And a very different performance though as well, I'd say.
Yes, very different
Um
hairstyle.
Yeah. But it's also, this film is kind of like, it's not sort of sensationalizing the caricature nature of what villainy can look like. It's kind of an everyday look at it. It's showing, it's kind of a microscopic look at what, what, how anyone can kind of be evil. Um
Yes.
even well, to the scale it's really hard to fathom, for for anybody really who um who reads history and reads these facts. It's so hard to connect to these things, and I think Glazer's really managed to bring together a story that kind of evokes it through sort of sound and kind of getting to look at the Holocaust in a completely different way. These were, unfortunately, the Nazis were mostly regular men and women who had subscribed to a propaganda that had been filtered through for hundreds hundreds of years and had been hyper focused at the end of the First World War for a dictator like Hitler, and how that can really poison the mind of people, and it's just, it serves to remind us, living in this day and age where the world's kind of falling apart,
Hmm.
um, where we can still learn from these stories. And we haven't had our fill, obviously, because we keep still doing these things. And to see people on screen being so matter of fact about their daily decisions that are, like you say, it's the film is like, you never really explicitly see anything happen that's gorish or anything, but you hear it in the background always.
Yeah.
And what he has done, achieved here in this movie with the sound design, is a character in of itself. We always hear the sound of dogs barking, distant gunshots, shouting, screaming in the background. But to the point where actually halfway through the film, you begin to kind of be desensitized to it.
Mm.
I felt like it became part of the everyday life of watching this movie, hearing these sounds in the background. It became, although the volume was still the same the whole way through the movie, like of the dexterity of what we hear these things going on in the background, it's still, we get number and number throughout the film, and that is almost like such a profound, scary impact on me as a viewer watching a movie like that.
Yes, I think that is the idea though of like, um, you know, this you are hit with the sound in the very first minutes of the film. You're almost made to feel very uncomfortable at the start. You have a pitch black screen, and all you have is the different. You have music playing, you have birds tweeting, and you're kind of like, there's a part of you where the screen is dark for so long that you're not sure if the projector's broken or not. Unless the projector was broken, Chris. Am I right? Did this happen
No,
in
it's
your
complete.
screening?
I think it was one of the most like sort of hypnotic moments of darkness in the begin like, in a film I'd seen in some time. It went on for probably what 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Like I
Yeah.
meant, like kind of uncomfortable. You like, is something wrong? And then obviously you're hit with that kind of actual visuals. So straight away you're like, okay, I'm being made uncomfortable. This is weird. And then obviously going in knowing at least a small amount of the premise of the film. You hear the background noises, the kind of, it's like almost just like a constant motor churn, which you can only
Yes.
imagine is horrible, horrible things happening. Distant screams, the odd gunshot, babies crying. But again, it's kind of like it's so distant. Um, but it's one of those things, like you said, you do, at first it's shocking, and then hour into the film, it is just the background noise, and you start to understand that's how these people live with this.
Yeah.
You learn that this isn't their first day in the house. Even the kids, they all this is just background noise to them now. The same
Sure.
way of like, I live next to a main road. That road was proper noisy when I first moved into this house. Now it's just background noise, and I guess that it's the
Yeah.
same thing, but it's almost just like terrifying how normal it is for this family. Um, but everything they do is so normal. And I wouldn't go as far to say as like it's trying to humanize evil or anything like that, but it's trying to show you like this isn't far away from you. Like you all look, we all look back and we're like, the Nazis are absolute monsters. How could anybody ever do this? But then a film
Mm.
like this is like, no, they are human. They are you. Um, and circumstances, this could be you. I find that difficult to believe, especially in the case of Rudolf Hoss, who literally, stumbles out of bed, walks into the camp next door, and just commits genocide every day.
Mm.
How one
Yeah.
would ever
And he
truly
was a real
become
pivotal.
him, but
Yeah. And he wasn't just like, I've kind of done, when I did A levels, I did Nazi Third Reich history, and kind of did a lot of reading when I was back then. So I read quite a few books on Auschwitz in particular. I've actually been to Auschwitz as
mm,
well, and Rudolf Haus was also not just like the commandant for years. He was also quite pivotal in designing a
mm,
lot of he Zyklon B, which was the main gas that was used on the Jews in the gas chambers. It was his idea to incorporate that, and it was he was a really big pivotal part of this machine. And I think you mentioning the sound design of that sound of machinery in the background all the time, it
mm,
feels like, I don't even think that is a physical presence in the film. It feels like just a piece of sound design that Glazer put in there just to make everything feel like they're on top of like this giant factory, this mechanical thing going on
mm.
in the background all the time. It's like, this ivory tower where nothing can be touched, but everything underneath is rotten and you know, sort of dying away. And it's really it's heartbreaking in a
Yeah.
way, in a non-obvious way, obviously.
Yeah, I guess as well, like, if you didn't have the context of World War II history, him standing there and billows of smoke coming out of chimneys, you'd be like, oh, they live next to a factory. But obviously,
Mm.
it's your own knowledge of
Yeah.
what's truly horrifying, that's going on
And
in
also,
there.
this is like not even. beside the main Auschwitz camp. This is like Auschwitz one, where the brick buildings are in the background. You see, it's like where they kept all the prisoners of war, and then a mile down the road, you got Auschwitz two, which is the one everybody knows, the big clock
Oh,
tower and
okay,
the
yeah.
watchtower and the rows of huts. You know, that's yeah, but it's insane. I mean, the whole sort of, I think he said over his time managing that camp that he was responsible for up to 2.5 million deaths, which is it's just insane. It's hard. It's so hard to fathom.
Mm,
And that's what these movies really struggle with. I mean, when you even go to visit these places, you cannot imagine
mm.
yourself being orchestrating anything like this, or you can't even picture an event like that happening in front of you. But Glazer goes for a completely different option that completely works. Sandra Huller, what did you think of her performance as Hedwig? I thought that was quite interesting. Kind of, she easily could have went into caricature. I think there's moments where she kind of goes into like what we expect that character to be,
Mm.
but we do see a sort of recognition in her that everything's not right, like someone who's forcefully trying to make everything around her serene and work. This garden is like a complete perfect example of it, where it's like this complete, it's almost like a Japanese garden and it's perfection and manicured and anything that goes out of place kind of can disrupt her at any moment.
Yes, I think the probably the best scene that kind of showcases that is when her mum comes to live with her, and
Yeah,
she's taken her through a tour of the garden, and her mum is kind of mentioning things that are potentially happening in the camp, like, oh, the Jewish girl who used to they used to know, like, she's probably in there. Who knows what they are up to, blah blah blah. And she seems to just kind of shrug it off, as in Sandra Hula seems to shrug it off and be like, "Look at the potatoes, it's all
yeah,
good," which is really
yeah,
interesting. And I guess as well, like, I don't know, the film's cruel in a way for making you even like slightly care about this family, and I guess that's the kind of normalcy of the drama, or the banality as well. Like when Rudolph is, he's told he's going to be moving on, and he has to tell his wife, and his wife doesn't want to move because this is the perfect house for her, next to the concentration camp,
yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, oh man,
And he
he's
makes a
gonna move.
purposeful, yeah,
You're like,
and he
stop
makes a
making me care.
purposeful effort to listen to his wife and try to go up to the higher beings of power to change the plans a little bit to service his family.
Yeah,
So we get this guy, we get insight into a man who actually did love his children and his wife. It's hard to, it's really hard to
it's
kind of
so difficult.
play with that a little
Like
bit.
even that phone call at the end, where he calls her to let her know that, like, the Operation Hoss, which was all the Hungarian Jews um, you know, being sent to different concentration camps. How proud he was that it was being named Operation Hoss after him, and he calls his wife in the middle of the night to let her know. And you're just like, oh
Yeah.
man, just stop making this interesting.
I know, and we get when he's saying goodbye, he's going into the stable and like is having a tender moment with his horse and telling his horse that he loves it. And it's like there's a guy how you see somebody who's capable of both things, but that's exactly the point. And the movie's not just about the hyper hypocrisy of human emotion compared to human benign evil. It is much more than that,
Mm,
and I was a little bit worried coming into the movie
mm.
that it would just be that and we'd be like, okay, I get it now. But
It's a lot
no,
different to what I thought it was going to be in terms of like the trailer, and I assumed it was going to be very much like we're just watching them go about their lives, and like every shot has like a chimney in the background, so like that like the setting is awful, but this is a kind of just normal life. And I thought, are they going to hit home this point in every single minute of this film? And I
hmm,
think thankfully they don't. um and it moves out of the house. I don't know. This is completely not the film I 100% thought it was going to be. It's still arty, but it does have a narrative.
hmm. Yeah, do they? Because the movie's set quite far into his time of being commandant at that camp because it's 1944 where we're dropped into the story. We're 1 year away from the end of this, really.
Yeah.
So the machine of this is in full swing. It's tried and tested over we're like 6 years into this thing already. Um, because Auschwitz was actually, it was instigated before the Second World War. Um, but yeah, it's like we're thrown into this thing, and it's just incredible to kind of fathom it. The river scene, like this whole hyper fixation on cleaning
Mm.
everybody, like they go into the river. There's like he finds like a piece of pelvis or something in the river, or like
Yeah.
a piece like a bone. And he take the kids back home and wash them, like spray their eyes out
But
even.
I was
Um,
assuming with that scene it was a case of like the camp is chucking stuff in the river, and he knows exactly the kind of stuff they might
oh,
be
he knows as soon as
throwing in the
he
river.
picks it up. Yeah,
Yeah, so I
what
was
it is.
thinking like, well, he knows there could be chemicals in there that he's sanctioned to be used on humans that he does not want on his kids, which is mad.
Possibly, or he's just so subscribed to because the propaganda they had, Alex, in those days were
Yeah,
like,
true.
if you touch them, if you touch Jews, you would be like, cursed or poisoned, or it was that level of
Yeah,
ridiculousness.
that's true.
Um,
That's true. Yeah.
there, I like from my own personal last thing I'll say about Huss in general. The movie hints that he is being taken away from the camp because of previous actions that he committed. I forget. Does the movie mention like what he might have done? Because it's what him and his wife are kind of arguing about.
Um,
Him
they
and
they
Hedwig
don't.
have had a previous argument over this before. Why he might
Yeah,
be
they don't
being
mention
moved.
a specific thing. Just I think she mentions like, could it be because of something in the
Well,
past? But
he I know in reality he had forced sexual relations with a Jewish female from the camp
well, that
who
is in the film, right?
it is in the film. I don't. Yeah, this is different though. She slightly. I kind of this is the movie's way of doing that, like showing. I think he probably just did it a lot in general to a
Mm.
lot of women, but there was one woman who he particularly striked up a relationship with, and he actually got a Jewish woman in the camp pregnant, and the year after forcibly gave her an abortion, and the SS, um, you know, um, sort of system of government, they kind of put him up to trial, and they were kicked. They say that he was probably kicked out of the camp because of that.
Oh, okay.
And so but the movie hints at it enough to
Yes.
kind of bring the point home about.
And
But
also enough
that's
to
just like a little
still
bit of
I was
insight.
very surprised when the rating popped up and it was a 12A. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, obviously you don't see any kind of sexual stuff, but he cleans himself off afterwards. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, this is a 12. Interesting.
It's funny. It's always been like this with these sort of movies that have sort of like historical, educational significance. I think, like, I mean, when you watch Schindler's List, that's a 15, but that should be a hard 18. That
Mm,
movie, when you watch that, like the stuff you kind of you're witness to. But yeah, I can make a case for like 12-year-old me, could do with seeing a movie like this.
mm,
I think it's good to educate you know children when they get to that certain age, if they're mature enough to kind of handle this material. Like, you got to be kind of, this is a real extreme way of telling people, this is what it's like if you
yeah.
go too far down
I
one
did
end. And
watch Schindler's
I,
List in school.
yeah, we watched it in school.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't actually watched it since.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely it's a hard watch,
Well,
obviously, but
yes, I
it's
remember at the
definitely,
time, but I remember being
yeah, it's
like
definitely
fast,
worth
like
watching.
Spielberg. It was an incredible piece of filmmaking. Um, but yeah, no, not returned.
It's like it is the least Spielbergy movie, though, isn't it? It's like that movie does look like a documentary half the time. He did it real like as it is arguably like it's not the one I would go watch loads, but like I've probably seen that movie 10 times. I'm like, yeah, that thing is that is a masterpiece. That probably is one of the best, better made Holocaust movies out there. It probably is the pinnacle still, but
Mm.
Zone of Interest, it does something very different, and
A very
you know,
unique angle on
oh
kind of
yeah.
the whole.
What did you think of the ending? I think this has been such a great year for like tried and tested directors bringing out good endings.
Yeah, well, I had two elements of the film that I wanted to bring up and kind of discuss more in detail with you, just because I don't fully still trying to get my head around them. And the
Yeah.
ending was one of them. Obviously, we cut to modern day Auschwitz, which is now
Mm,
a museum. And I guess the idea is we watched the cleaners clean the glasses of the kind of different showcases of kind of shoes and clothing and all this kind of stuff from the camp itself. And I wondered if it was drawing comparisons between like the desensitization of those cleaners just going about their everyday job, probably desensitized to the horrors that they're kind of cleaning the glass of, just because it's such an everyday thing. And
yeah.
then to the horrors of kind of the Hoss family and their kind of desensitization. Obviously, not drawing the same levels of kind of like
Of course.
evil. The
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cleaners are just there. They're not Nazis, or at least it's
Because obviously,
not implied that
and
they
you
are.
know, and obviously, it's an act of preservation as well. And yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
But you're right.
really
Yeah.
powerful, powerful. But powerful in a way like I didn't find this film sad. If that's, I found it very cold. But like I know we're going to talk about All of Us
Mm.
Strangers in a minute. But that film was actively sad. This one was almost just like
It had
actively
moments of
cold.
it had moments of severe intensity for me. I think even earlier on when we established that we have a groundskeeper, um, member of the Jewish community in the camp who kind of comes in and out, and he head down, does the work, goes out at the wall at a certain time, and then we have this a young woman who works there and kind of dances around, almost evading Sandra Hüller Hedwig. Um,
Mm,
throughout the whole movie, and there's a scene where she is Hedwig has company at the house at the beginning of the movie, and they're in this little tiny kitchen room where they're all having drinks and having catch up, reading the magazines, whatever, gossiping. And this young woman is just she's pouring a single shot glass, and she's trying to like balance it on like a silver dish and try to like navigate going through the house and without spilling a drop. And that was like one of the most intense things, yeah, because I didn't have a fully formed idea of what Hedwig was capable of.
mm,
And I felt like the whole 2 minutes I was going on, I was like, do not spill anything. I don't want anything
uh,
happening to you right now. And I thought that the movie had some moments where just really had some very subtle moments of intensity where I was just like, oh, like
yeah,
a dread was kind of going
yeah.
through me.
The other part of the film that I wanted to chat with you about were the scenes that were filmed in kind of night vision.
Mm,
So at first, they usually correlate at the same time that Rudolf Hoss is reading a book to his children, but then cuts to
he's reading Hansel and Gretel to them, isn't he?
yeah, and it's a young girl. It's all at night. She's in it's the camera is a night vision camera, and she's
Hmm.
like picking apples out of like a mud pile or something. You're not
Yeah, it's like an infrared camera, isn't
yeah,
it?
you don't
Yeah.
fully understand what's happening. But then it's revealed that she is a Jewish girl who's kind of hiding in a nearby village. Am I
Mm.
right in this way of thought? Um, I guess yeah. What are your thoughts?
And she's
What are
playing,
your thoughts
yeah.
on that? Because it is like it's almost like a B segment to the film itself. Well, what were your kind of interpretations of that? Help me out,
Yeah,
please.
that's kind of. Although I find that sort of it was transfixing. I haven't had. That's probably the thought I've got least developed about the story. I mean, I think it's, I think it's plays into later on where it shows even those acts of kindness were kind of for nothing. That like even there was this resistance within the Jewish people to sort of carry on, but it got stomped out anyway. There's that sort. Yeah, it is a hard thing. I think it also lends itself to the stylistic choices that Glazer's doing with the surveillance sort of approach of the film. It kind of adds to this coldness a little bit, this distance a little bit at night. Because at nighttime, I think it's trying not to look as cinematic as possible.
Mm,
By adding this sort of infrared technique, it's almost just trying to add to the sort of you're watching this in Big Brother mode.
yes.
But yeah, thematically, as to why, yeah, it is interesting. But we do show later on that the whole effort of this girl's kindness is futile.
Yes.
Um, and actually punishes the people in the camp
How do?
because two men ended up fighting over one of the apples that she planted,
Oh yes, we
and
hear that through the ears of like a young child, don't of one of the
mm,
children. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Putting two and two together now. Got it.
yeah, but I'm sure there's more to uncover there because the
Probably.
movie spend significant time
Mm.
kind of bookending scenes and sections of the film with this.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah. If anybody else has thoughts out there, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Let us know. Um. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Did you stay to the end of the credits?
Oh, oh no. I
No, no
stayed until like so like names would pop up and the lights didn't come up, so I was like, okay.
mm,
But then when it was actually scrolling up, I was like, I think I can leave. Pretty sure
yeah.
this isn't a Marvel movie.
I didn't. I didn't mean. I just felt that Glazer had such intent on that final music choice over the closing credits. This almost like very disturbing piece of music that uses a lot of like howling
Mm,
and almost screams within it. It almost just completely represents the horrors that we didn't get to experience in the film. I just find that completely like so intentional and like crescendoed as the credits went on, and I felt like it was part of the film itself. I stayed all the way to the end of the credits just to kind of hear where that was going, but that had a real lasting effect over me. But
uh, maybe I should have.
I was the last one sitting there,
Yeah, yeah.
by
To be honest,
the way.
people did stay, but I was kind of, I don't know. Now I feel bad, but I was kind
Those
of
sort of,
like, Nick Fury
I
ain't
know
turning up.
you have more strength than me. Those sort of, it's just films like that do sort of plant me on my seat,
Mm,
and I do kind of have to. You have to kind of re-inject yourself
yeah,
with with life, and it's kind of a, yeah, yeah. You kind of had to sit on it a little bit, but I knew instantly that I really liked this
yeah.
film. I think most people. I think you're right. I think it is approachable, even though it has got that A24 stamp on it. It has got that Jonathon Glazer sort of artsy approach to it. I think anybody who's sort of interested in human beings and the acts that human beings can achieve,
Mm,
um yeah, we should definitely go see this film.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's on the best picture nominee list. It's so against. I'm loving this list this year.
Yeah,
It's so
it
strange.
is very different for the Oscars. And obviously we talk Sandra Hüller a lot. I just want to shout out Christian Friedel,
Oh, he's
who
he's
plays Rudolph
I actually
Haas.
think I think he's the standout performance in this
Yeah,
movie.
he looks so young as well, and I don't think he is because I just had a quick look now. He's born in 1979, but he looks like mid-20s in the film. I don't know. I there was
Mm.
something about his youthful appearance and just how evil he is that I just like couldn't put two and two together in a way, but in a good way.
That haircut he has though, like that SS haircut in general, it seems
Mm.
that too many young men seem to have these days
I
still.
accidentally got given one once.
Oh no.
Shaved my head a little too much, and yeah, I wore a hat for a long time because I was really worried that I looked like a neo-Nazi. And yeah, his haircut brought all the memories flooding back.
I see a couple of him every day when I walk down the street.
Yeah. Shall we?
Anyway,
Shall we move over to our next film, Chris?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, All of Us Strangers, a lot of hype behind this movie. I think for like the last year, wasn't originally screened about 12 months ago in the festival circuit, and we've been really like teased and looking forward to this film for a long time. It feels strange that a British film we get to see it last. Um, but yeah, I mean Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott. I mean Andrew Scott's somebody I've been really a strong admirer of. From his TV background, from Sherlock to even Fleabag, The Hot Priest. So it's really cool to see him lead a movie this time.
Yeah.
I thought that this was going to be like a completely co-led film, so I was really surprised that he was he is the movie really.
Yeah, I think there's this new version of me now that really either doesn't take note of trailers or watches them
Just
once.
files it
Yeah,
away.
watches them
Yeah.
once and that's it. And compared to me from like 10 years ago, I was like watching every trailer that came out every week. And like for films I really wanted to watch, I was watching the trailers multiple times. I went into this film thinking that Paul Mescal was the main character, and then I was like, oh, he's definitely not. Uh,
Have you seen the poster? Andrew Scott's head's 3 times larger than Paul
I
Mescal's.
don't know if I've seen that poster. I've just seen the one that's like an apartment block.
Oh yeah, yeah, the letterboxed
Yeah,
one.
I don't know
Yeah,
if I've
yeah,
seen any others. I'll have to have a look. Um, so yeah, no, I was very surprised coming into this film, and Andrew Scott was the main guy as well. But pleasantly surprised. He's a brilliant actor from his, like you said, early days of Sherlock and Fleabag and stuff. So yeah, good to see him leading the film. But yeah, All of Us Strangers follows a screenwriter named Adam, played by Andrew Scott, in his kind of pretty much near empty apartment block, only seemingly only kind of occupied by Paul Mescal's character as well, Harry. And he has like a strange drunken encounter with Harry one night, and then we move into a story where he's kind of writing a story about his parents, but he's also seeing his parents again,
yeah.
who died in a car crash when he was 12. So yeah, I think it is because at first you don't know whether these things are going on in his mind, whether it's whether it's this kind of him writing, bringing up these memories, and him kind of considering what these kind of what his parents would say about his sexuality and all that kind of stuff because they didn't know he was gay or seemingly didn't know he was gay, um,
Hmm.
or whether it's kind of a ghost story. I think by the end, it is definitely a ghost story, right?
I yes, I can completely say that I think this is a ghost story in the full sense. Maybe, yeah, we'll get into it. I have we have opinions on on this show, and we might have similar opinions.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, this is a very interpretive film.
Yeah, and very dreamy. It's kind of
Oh yeah.
it's slow, but not in a bad way. Just kind of slow. The music is kind of very lulling. Kind of when it isn't broken through by brilliant 80s songs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It
But even they're used to like a haunting degree. It's almost like you're trapped in this sort of elevator that's just stuck on going up and down the whole time, and the doors are never going to open. It's sort of that dreamy quality to it, like you said.
yeah. So I mean, obviously, go watch this film. I think we're gonna have to get into it to really kind of understand.
Oh, you can't talk around this
You really
movie. It's
can't
really,
talk
really
around this
hard.
movie. I think I tried to. I think I saw you. I think I played Fortnite with you the day after, and you were like, "What do you think?" I was like, "Good. Can't say anything else. Can't say anything else." But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those films that really kind of allows you to kind of meditate on your own life, and family, and grief, and all
Hmm.
kinds of things. So, yeah, how do we even talk about it? Uh, you know,
I think do we just go through the movie in a way?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So he literally just goes on a whim to go to visit his old parents' house. He's going through old photographs, and it feels like he's been having a sort of crisis of kind of self realization and also kind of looking back at his life a little bit. He's having this sort of moment of quiet. He's a writer, but he's sort of having writer's block where he's kind of in between books and he's writing about his family
Mhm.
and he's writing about that event in his life. So he goes back to visit the home, and his mum and dad are there, played by Jamie Bell and Claire
Oh,
Foy, and they're exactly here.
so
Yes,
good.
this movie has four essential performances, and all four performances are pretty amazing.
Incredible.
Um, so they're exactly the way he left them in 1987.
Mm,
Like even the house is the same, his bedroom's the same, everything exactly the way it is. But they're aware that they're no longer, with the living anymore. They're aware that he is an adult now, and they recognize him as soon as they see him.
mhm,
And it feels like they've come to terms with things already. There's a comfort, and they kind of want to resume their relationship with the son or provide him with some comfort, but they seem trapped in this prison. They don't understand the whole like how the AIDS epidemic and everything, how the nation's perception of that has completely changed, they're still stuck in the dark ages of ill opinion, let's just say, and then it leads to pretty interesting conversations individually when like Claire Foy and Andrew Scott are in the house together, just them, and likewise the dad, Jamie Bell
Mm.
and Adam are alone, and it leads into these really interesting discussions. Meanwhile, we got this relationship with Paul Mescal, um, back in the apartment block that's sort of seeming to blossom. Adam seems to be seeing a different side of his sexuality that he never really explored, a more sort of explicit extroverted side of it, and seems to be this sort of support from both ends. And where's it going to go?
Yeah.
um,
Can we let's talk about the coming out scenes then? He obviously, almost in a moment of therapy, gets to kind of come out to his mum originally, um, and in a way that he never got the chance to. And then she reacts in a way that I think both parents react opposite to how you think they're going to react.
sure,
Because I think
sure,
Claire Foy plays the mum. There's something so specific about her performance. She feels very mumly. It's great,
mm.
um,
And she feels like a woman of that time too,
hundred
doesn't she?
percent. And I think that's why it took me for a minute. And this is why originally I didn't think it was a ghost story. The
Mm,
coming out scene with his mum feels almost very kind of cliche in terms of the
yeah.
way somebody might react. Um, but then, yeah, I think late
I've seen that happen in real life. I've seen people react that way.
exactly.
You
So
know,
I didn't know
uh,
if it was like, oh, we're going through all the different tropes. He must be playing this out in his head. But no, she is just, a woman of the 80s who, like you said, is living with the AIDS epidemic and kind of how that, and all the kind of anti-gay propaganda that was going on during the
oh yeah,
time, and how that would shape somebody's view. And I think her kind of small-minded views are maybe down to fears of how her son will integrate into society more than anything. Yeah,
yeah,
that was, I think, both coming out scenes are a standout to me. When he comes out to his dad, he's already been given the kind of heads up from the mum, and the dad you assume is going to react worse, but he doesn't. He's a lot more like, "Oh, we know it's all good," kind of thing. But kind
yeah.
of
There's still that
there's
sort of like,
there's the inner turmoil of maybe I've been too hard on you in the past. Maybe he likes to think he knew, but he didn't really, kind of thing,
yeah,
or else he wouldn't have been calling him a fairy and whatever else he did at a dinner table. I can't remember.
yeah,
There's one of the early scenes where he says something about him being like a sissy or something.
yeah. And it's like this admission as well that like he knew that his son was being bullied, and he was crying in his bedroom when he was a kid and never went in to comfort him.
Mm,
And Adam was also aware of that,
mm,
and it's so well done, this film, in terms of like how it understands the passage of time, that like these people haven't been on pause for the last like 40 years. Like they have been thinking about this a long time.
mm,
And so whenever Adam, or vice versa, anybody asks a question to anybody, they kind of they know the answer, and they're willing to tell and talk through this thing because they've had time to think about it.
mm,
You know, when he talks to his dad, asks him why he never came in, he's prepared to give that answer and doesn't do the cliche thing that any other movie would do and shut that answer away and try to deviate from the conversation.
yeah.
Um, which yeah, just leads to these moments that are so poignant, and it doesn't galvanize our vision of the parents of being like all these poor people. They're completely saintly. There's gray to them as well. That's both culturally defined by the 80s and where they were at, but also they were doting parents, and it's heartbreaking to see what happened. You know, it's and this movie is about closure in general.
Mm.
And should we talk about the Paul Mescal character then, which I think is going to have the most people talking about when they leave this movie at the end?
Yes. Well, actually, before we talk Paul Mescal, can I just talk
Okay,
one scene that kind of is in
sure.
reaction to the coming out scene? So you have the second scene, which is not his coming out, but he's come out to his mum, and then he doesn't see her until after he's come out to his dad, and then the next scene they're all together. They're putting up Christmas decorations,
Ugh,
and probably the best use of the Pet Shop Boys, "You're Always on My Mind," is used as the mum kind of sings the lyrics, and they're all singing, but she's singing them directly to him. She wants him
yeah.
to know that, like, I can't fully express how I feel, but
But I
I'm
love
trying
you
to tell
anyway.
you through
Yeah.
the song. And I think as well the two choices of songs, and that's it. But that scene, by the way, is my favorite scene. That was the one that like
Yeah.
nearly brought me fully to tears. Um, but I think the use of those kind of music, and I think it's pointed out. You obviously have the Pet Shop Boys, you have Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Power of Love, one of the greatest songs of all time, and
Mm.
and I think when he's going through his old vinyls, he's one of the first vinyls is Erasure, and I think there's something about the '80s of like this big conservative kind of anti-gay AIDS epidemic going on, but at the same time the music of the '80s is so gay,
Yeah.
and but like in a way that like I don't think unless you were fully switched onto it you would
Yes.
know just how like kind of
It was just the music
rebellious
of the
it
time.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's I mean you can look into the history of kind of Frankie Goes to Hollywood and their different songs and how they kind of like went above the heads of some people and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I think I think it points out like a really good point of like there was comfort there, um in that kind of rebellious nature, because I think the 80s, although we're seeing the parents of that era be shaped
Mm.
by those kind of views, that was the decade where I think things started to change a bit. Like, the LGBTQ world became, at least started to fight to become more mainstream. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because that scene
No,
was
that's like,
very powerful.
well, it goes up there. I hold Paul Mescal films completely responsible for ruining two songs I really like now.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Um,
Under Pressure and Always on My
yeah,
Mind. Come on.
never go to a club with Paul Mescal. But yeah,
But you're
let's
right.
talk about
I think
him.
this is.
Go on.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. He is. I think he's just defining the sexy sad boy. Is just like it. That's just his. That's his thing. Um, but no. It's interesting just to talk about this character in general because it feels so obvious when the realization that the film comes, and I'll dance around that at the moment, but we were given such clues to this character throughout the story. This apartment block that Andrew Scott kind of between seeing his parents and his relationship with Paul Mescal, and we never get to see Paul's flat or what's his character,
Harry,
Harry.
yeah.
Yeah, we never get to see Harry's flat. He always comes to Andrew, to Adams, and we kind of see them go in their sort of having sort of sensual moments together. Harry's looking after Adam, or vice versa, or the scene where they go out clubbing is so cool. Like it is a proper like almost one core Y sort of scene in terms of capturing motion
Yeah.
and the lucidity of like being in and out of a dreamlike
And
state, and
very
also yeah
loud,
it is.
like because the film's very quiet to that
You
point.
sound so old.
It's yeah, but it's like
Too
it
loud.
punctuates your ears with like the booming bass of a club. Compared to the rest of the film, it was very
Mhm.
loud.
And you don't know what is like reality and what is not.
Mm,
I mean, it is worth mentioning that like he did just pop a bunch of pills. um,
yeah,
so yeah, so we're in this sort of drug like state, but yeah, so we have this subtle hint kind of going through it the movie that there's a sadness to Harry. There's not he's loving and there's an outpouring towards Adam, but there is something else going on deeper
yeah,
under the surface that is kind of being ignored because we've got this whole other kind of plot going on that we as viewers are maybe naturally just more interested in because that's the vocal point of
yeah.
the
But
film.
also, there's like
Um,
this element of Harry's a lot younger, and their
oh
experiences of
yeah,
being gay are different. But I think what Harry is trying to tell Adam is like it's still not perfect. I still haven't got an ideal life. There is a sadness, and it's not always. I think they make a point of being like, it's not necessarily because I'm gay, but I think there's an element of like, life isn't going 100% right for me either.
but yeah, he hasn't talked to his family in
Yeah,
years. Yeah, he's sort of like the black sheep of the family, and that's sort of tied to his to him being gay and other things. It's just there's ambiguity about that relationship. Um, yeah. So and there's also hints that like he's been drinking heavily. He does say to him early on in the film, well, Adam offers him a drink, and he's like, "I'm not drinking at the moment."
Mm.
That comes into play heavily
Yeah.
later on at the end of the film. Should we just jump to the chase?
Yeah.
Like, because I'm really interested to see what your thoughts are on this, like the timeline of or who's on this.
Yep.
We did get closure between the parents and Adam, which is I think the scene that had me close to tears when they all go to the diner is the first time the parents actually leave the home,
Yeah.
and they go with him to the diner, and it's a sort of like dreamlike state as well, where all the cards are being left on the table. They want to know if their death was quick. We didn't even mention that they died in a car crash.
Yeah. Oh
They
no, I
both.
did. I did.
Oh,
I
you
did.
did. Sorry. Yeah, but they want to know if their deaths were quick, and there's this whole closure. Like, Adam, we shouldn't see us anymore. This isn't good for anybody.
Mm.
Um, and seeing Andrew Scott upset, um, turn almost boyish in that moment, like begging, like, "Oh, I'll get to see you once a year,"
Mm.
and then he does this thing with his face that's so. It's just like seeing a puppy being shot. It's awful. It is awful.
Being shot.
Um,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, yeah, you wouldn't like that, would you?
No, that's true. It's true.
So it's the perfect analogy. Yeah, so it's a heartbreaking scene that nearly got me. But yeah, and then we go home and we think the relationship's going to resume between Adam and Harry, and it's not really how it's going to go.
No, it's kind of revealed that our initial first interaction with Harry after he'd been drinking and was speaking to Adam outside of his apartment in a somewhat awkward, uncomfortable introduction is potentially the only time we've seen Harry alive that same night he took his own life.
Yeah, it was like the last. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back, wasn't it? Really,
Mm,
like he propositioned Adam in the elevator, and Adam rejected him. Out of not rejected him is a strong word.
yeah,
He's a stranger at the end of
drunken
the day.
stranger.
Is a drunken stranger. But yeah, that seemed to be like the last time. That's interesting. I thought the same thing. And what's your opinion on Adam? So obviously, Harry's been dead this whole kind of movie,
Yeah,
and you think he's been like a ghost, right?
yeah,
And we discussed because Adam goes into his apartment for the first time. There's bottles everywhere, like empty takeout boxes, and he goes into his bedroom, and there's just Harry's rotting corpse, and it's horrible.
yeah.
Um,
My initial reaction to this was actually somewhat negative, um, only because the film is relentlessly sad, and
yeah, it's too
it's
sad.
almost too sad. And I think after we just gone through that whole scene with his parents, um, to then be
Yeah.
hit with, oh, and he's dead as well. It was kind of like, oh God, come on. And
Mm,
I mean, like, thinking back on it now, like, I get it, but I don't like the film didn't set me up enough to be ready for that. I was ready for like I'm getting over the death of my parents and going through all those kind of things that I'm going through, and now like this is the light. Harry is the light at the end of the tunnel. We can be there for each other, and maybe that's too
okay.
wishy washy happy. I don't know, but I it just didn't. I was more annoyed that the film was trying to be even more sad again, and I don't know. I'm still jury's out on how well I think that works. And I've listened to interviews with the director, and I get it. It's not the ending you assume is going to happen, and it is an adaptation of a Japanese book, I believe.
Yeah, it came out in the 80s.
So
A short novel.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you are working with how much you want to adapt and all that kind of stuff as well, and with it, and that surprise also fully solidifies the fact that you are watching a ghost movie or a ghost story, should I say. But yeah, it was just a case of, oh man, there's a lot of films revolving around,
Like, give this guy a break.
yeah,
Yeah.
but also like there's a lot of films, and a lot of them I really like, so I can't be too critical, but that revolve around gay people, men and women, um, that always have kind of sad, tragic endings. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, it's another one of these," you know.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, like I can't, like I said, I can't critique it too much. I love Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I love Call Me by Your Name. Arguably, both of those have very sad, tragic endings for their characters who are homosexuals. So,
Mm.
but this was just like, oh, another one. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I have to bring up somebody else's thoughts really. Lauren went to see this with me, and she had completely different opinion on the characters and where they were at the end of the film. That I thought that was a lot more profound than my take.
Ooh,
Her opinion when she watched the film was the first thing she said to me is she felt that Adam had been dead the whole story.
okay.
um, that the apartment block just served as like a purgatory. There's a reason why we don't see anybody there the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, that this is sort of like this whole space, this movie was a reason for all these sort of lost souls to congregate and have these moments of closure. Hence why they both turn into stars at the end of the movie. She felt that they both kind of
Okay.
elevated together.
Yeah.
So that the movie, in a way, had a happy ending in that regard. Um, so I thought that was quite interesting,
Yeah.
to be honest. It made me look at the film in a different way, and it'd be interesting to revisit it with that in mind. Um,
Yeah, because I
because we
guess
never really feel like, yeah,
the ending with the star is
we never see Adam interact with anybody. He feels like in this sort of empty
he
space this
does.
whole
I mean, you
time.
see him like around people on the tube, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, yeah, I mean, I would not disregard that theory. I could that is a strong theory because that makes the star ending make more sense. Um,
Yes, that's what I felt.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
I guess for me, I was looking at it um, like we're all going through something. Like we're so small
hmm.
in comparison to everything that's going on. But yeah, but that's more of a kind of a
It's a more hopeful ending, even though it's technically he's everybody's got out of the picture then, but like in a way, it's more hopeful
yeah.
ending for this character. I
Oh,
feel
I
like
want to know
yeah,
now.
that's great. I think it's sort of the first film in a long time that usually film is like, oh yeah, the film ending could be up to interpretation, but usually it's 80% one way or another.
Yeah,
This way, you really could make a case for anything because the movie just sort of operates in that sort of way. But I love the way we haven't had really like a full fledged unapologetic ghost movie
yeah,
in so long, and it's like this, and yeah, there's a reason why we said at the start of the episode from Oscar favorites to Oscar snubs,
yeah,
because it's great performances in this, and I think Andrew Scott in particular and Claire Foy, all of them. Jimmy Bell is even amazing. Well, I think Jimmy Bell is one of the most underrated British actors of all time.
mm,
He has been consistently anything I ever see that guy in. He is a phenomenal actor.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, like, if you want to see some heart wrenching, some beautiful cinematography, and you want to cry your eyes out, then All of Us Strange. Although I didn't emotionally like completely bawl my eyes out as I expected to. I think there's a lot of expectation going into this that the movie is going to make you feel
yeah,
like this is going to be After Sun 2.0, and so just try not to like get your expectations too high, just ride with the
yeah.
movie because it is a beautiful film.
There
And
was definitely some crying in my cinema.
oh really,
Definitely,
right, okay,
and very full cinema. I'm glad to see how well this is
yeah,
doing in terms of like bringing people to the
that's
cinema.
good word of
It's
mouth,
and
yeah,
for a film that doesn't feel very mainstream, seems to be getting a lot of mainstream attention, which is excellent,
yeah.
deservingly so. Yeah,
I almost walked out of our screen.
I walked past one with lots of tissues. Yeah,
Oh, did you?
yeah. No, how come you nearly walked out? What happened?
Well, I nearly said to Lauren, "I'm gonna have to come back another time. I'm gonna have to come back another time." I red flag already. A guy turned up by himself, dressed in his motor, no, his bicycle get up, and he walked into the cinema with his helmet still on.
Okay.
Red flag number one. He had about like half a mile to walk until he got to that point. He was talking to himself at the beginning.
Oh no.
Yeah, and was throwing his hands out in the air like he was trying to catch something. And for about 10 minutes to 15 minutes of the film, he intermittently sneezed in the most violent way every 5 seconds. I'm not exaggerating at all. 70 to 100 sneezes until he stopped, and he got. It was really funny because he started getting annoyed with himself, and he started shouting "fuck me" after he sneezed. uh, so I was getting a little bit like pissed off,
Yeah.
and I said, to him, I'm gonna have to come back and everything. I'm not like I basically the first 5 minutes of the movie, like I went over my head because of I couldn't get into it.
Yeah, of course. Oh man.
Is this
Did he
yeah, and
stop
like
though? I'm guessing.
yeah, well, suddenly after about 15 minutes, he stopped and never again. No, because he fell asleep. He fell asleep. That's right. We left this. We were the last ones to leave at the end of the film before him, and we went down. And I walked past his chair, and he was still asleep. I didn't wake him up,
No.
so he might still be in there.
There's oh man, it's one of those things that is
I hate it
it's
when
those
it
kind of
happens.
stories where you just like I love going to the cinema, but there is nothing worse than when somebody doesn't know how to act,
Go to the cinema.
behave in a cinema, especially with a film like All of Us Strangers, where you need an audience that's gonna sit there and
I
give
know.
their full attention because
This is a work night in the evening. I took a lot, it took a lot to
yeah,
get me out to go and to get see us pissed off.
yeah, yeah. So
But it was funny. It was funny after on the drive home. We laughed. We
that's
laughed a
good
lot.
because I think my sadness mainly came from the drive home. There was a lot more kind of like,
You went to see both of these films by
no, no,
yourself?
no. I
Oh no,
went with
you went.
them to All of Us Strangers, so we had a lot more kind of. So like you said, the film didn't bring me to tears, made me sad. Made my eyes water a little bit.
There's yeah. I'm
Um,
exactly the
but
same as
it
you.
was the
Yeah,
conversations on the drive home about kind of grief,
yeah. It's a lingerer. Yeah,
which kind of it was a very emotional kind of drive home, I would say.
yeah. And it could be applied to anybody, regardless if you're going through what the characters are or not. Although I think if you are going through what this character is going through, if you if it would hit you like a sledgehammer,
Yes.
um, in comparison. But yeah, on a I think anybody would be struggled not to be touched by
Yeah.
this. You'd have to have a heart of stone not to find something, revealing within yourself.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
Two films, two thumbs up,
Yeah.
or four thumbs up.
Strong recommend on both All of Us Strangers and The Zone of Interest. Hopefully, we've kept it relatively light for our listeners, maybe, considering
Yeah.
the discussions. And look, we're an hour in, so yeah, I don't think we would have had time to discuss all the things that happen in Stalker as well.
Stalker. I
So
don't think I don't think you could fill a minute with what you from what you told me about Stalker.
no, we wouldn't. No, the Stalker is going to be a really good conversation, and I look forward to that. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, it's going to have to be next week. Um, along with, I don't know. I think we're going to figure that out as we go. But American Fiction, maybe, and maybe The Iron
Hmm.
Claw. We're going to find out. We'll find. Come back next week. We're not going to promise anything. We should probably stop promising things because they just don't happen.
It feels more likely that they won't happen if you promise it. If we don't promise it, it'll probably happen.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, more
you'll get what you're given.
yeah, more films. I'm really looking forward to seeing in the next week or so. So yeah, really looking forward to come back and doing this again. But yeah, big strong recommend from both of us on both of those films there.
There you have it.
Cool. Well, make sure you follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok. I know I said we were going to be doing our 4 favorite films, but I got a bit of camera fright, and there's a there's a video ready to go, and
Existential
I just don't
crisis.
know whether to post it or not. I'm having the camera jitters right now, so it'll come to you one way or another, I'm sure, at some
Yeah.
point. But yeah, just follow us there. We try our best, but yeah, sometimes we cringe a little as well. But that has been the film angle for this week. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chris.
Bye and good night.
See you later.
Bye.